Hello, my soccer universe. This is Roland, and welcome to Football Talk episode 1. And we're talking, of course, about the Club World Cup final that happened yesterday in the evening here in Europe, in the afternoon, of course, in the United States at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Yes, we say New York, New Jersey for that one. There's a whole lot of can of worms. I want to talk about the final first, then I want to go a little bit into my general observations on that FIFA Club World Cup, the first ever huge edition. I mean, we had the FIFA Club World Cup for quite a while now, but not in that type of format. And let's see what this will bring us going forward. But first off, the final between Chelsea and PSG ahead of the game. Everyone said, PSG is gonna roll over and flatten Chelsea in every part of the game. They're just a superior team. And I think with that, you poke the lion just enough. Because from the get-go, Chelsea showed they actually are here to play. And they actually put in a high press that made PSG very uncomfortable, and this is something we have seen with PSG. In the Champions League, if you press them high, they don't feel all that safe. Add to it that I think Donnarumma did not have the best day. He did not make the miracle saves that he usually does, so this accounts for not a good day for Donnarumma, which is kind of ridiculous in a way. And you felt that PSG are already on the back foot. For the first 10 minutes, Chelsea completely dictated the tempo and never let PSG breathe. And while I was watching that, I was thinking, is this really now Chelsea taking PSG apart? And they had the big chance by Cole Palmer already, who just missed by a hair. But this was the only miss in the game that he had. Or will this be like the 2009 Champions League final, where United were dominant for the first 10 minutes and then Eto'o scores, and from that moment on it was only Barca. The first goal in the heat, and yes, it may not have been as hot in East Rutherford as it usually was, but the first goal in the heat is usually the decisive one. Also, when you look at PSG's result during the entire competition, it was, if PSG score first, they win, and they win big. However, the one time that they conceded first, they were losing. But I gotta say, after 10 minutes, that was the first sustained phase for PSG, and I thought maybe they're getting themselves back into the game. And then there was a beautiful pass, I think, by Hakimi towards the right side of the PSG attack, where there's Desirée Doué, who is one-on-one with the goalie, and for some reason wants to pass it into the center. Here, you have to find the goal. That was the big chance for PSG. If they score here, it really will go like the 2009 Champions League final. And I think this is the point where PSG actually did lose it. Yes, Desirée Doué had the first shot on goal a little bit later, but then in the 22nd minute it was a goal kick by Robert Sanchez, really great goal kick, right onto Malo Gusto, and Nuno Mendes, the best left back in the world as of late, is completely caught off guard there. And while then the PSG defense can clear, the ball comes to Cole Palmer, who calmly guides it into net. A very similar goal as he scored in the final at Euro 2024. And it's 1-0 Chelsea. Game very much on. And from that moment, I think PSG tried to wrestle themselves back into the game, but were always caught out. And I have to laud Maresca for his tactics. He identified actually Nuno Mendes and the high-pressing outside players as the weak spot. And time again, he found Malo Gusto, he found on left side João Pedro, was always a danger man up front. This is the type of player that Chelsea have been missing for a long time. And so it again comes from a long ball onto the right side. This time it is João Pedro, and it was, I think, after the cooling break. And again, the ball comes to Palmer, and almost the same goal in the 30th minute. It's 2-0 Chelsea. And at that moment, you really, for the first time, really had the feeling, it's not going to work for PSG today. And very late on in the first half, it was even then a pass from Palmer onto João Pedro, 3-0 Chelsea. You would be hard-pressed to think that PSG had a chance of coming back. Yes, in the second half, there were the occasional chances there. And if they score early, maybe something can happen. 2005 Champions League final, not that I want to remember it all that much. But, that would be the blueprint for that. It didn't happen. And so Chelsea saw this out relatively easy, and in the end PSG also lost their nerves, and I think their status as the overwhelming favorite in this final. let's face it, PSG have been the best team in this competition. And while the feeling was that Chelsea is in the final, and when you saw the bracket, you very well could see Chelsea going into the final. And there was always the feeling that Chelsea, this was kind of an easy path to the final, which I find is very Eurocentric and very Euro snobbery, against all the Brazilian teams who have actually been doing quite well. That Chelsea won now this final actually lifts the Brazilian teams further in that competition. And so, I have been saying that Chelsea have been a joke for most of the time, but I think with João Pedro, they have found something there. And they were a different team already in the semi-final. They were also a different team in the final, and the tactics by Enzo Maresca were spot on. Either you press way up high, or you retreat and you press way low. But you took all the danger from PSG coming through Kvaratskhelia or Dembélé completely out of the game. The only attacker that you saw at times was Doué, and he was off as well. Now, for me, does this change that PSG is the best team in the world? Not yet. For that, this competition is too little established, and for PSG it was the Champions League. That's the crowning glory. Yes, you would have liked to add on this trophy as well. Little bit post-game as well. We had a light scuffle at the end with Luis Enrique completely losing it and shoving João Pedro in the face. There was also Donnarumma or something. I don't know what was happening. I have not really heard what was happening there. I have to say this did not befit what you would expect from a losing team at all. Yes, you may have lost your nerve, and PSG have been on the edge. Remember the 2 red cards against Bayern Munich? Yeah, but I don't know what happened. I don't think that João Pedro was an innocent party there as well. And then we have to, of course, talk about the trophy lift. What can I say? I mean, it shouldn't be a secret that I'm not a fan of the American president. He made it all about himself. Again, and we saw the picture with the referees taken where he and Gianni Infantino. And Gianni Infantino is really going down the drain in my view of him. He is so much pandering to the big world leaders, but not the, nice democratically elected ones, although Trump technically was democratically elected. But he goes really after all these autocratic leaders and he schmoozes them up and so on. I have to say, when I watched the medal ceremony in a way, I always have to admire how Ceferin, just like a robot, gives out the medals. Did you see how Infantino and Trump were completely not organized there, and how they held up the entire line, and then you have the little handlers there holding back the players who say, well, we have done this a million times, we can walk up there. It was rather odd, but the oddest thing definitely was when they handed over the trophy. Yes, the trophy has a stand, but it was not lifted, put over with the stand, and I thought one can close the trophy a little bit more, which would make it better for lifting, but I guess they want to have it open to have it look like a galaxy. That trophy is another thing. I mean, Infantino, I think, is 2 or 3 times written on there. It's also really, really weird. But you saw they gave the trophy to Reece James, and you saw Infantino pointing to Trump, we leave now the stage. And Trump just stands next to Reece James and said, I'm gonna stay here. lift. And then Infantino, lift it up. And Trump is standing right there in the middle. He has nothing to do there. He's nothing done to earn this honor to stand there. Tells you a lot about his personality. And this was just a preview of what's gonna happen at next year's World Cup final. Trump will be front and center. My thought is, well, may Mexico win that World Cup, because that would be a scene that I would love to see, honestly. So yeah, Chelsea are officially world champions now. As I said, feels a little bit odd. Especially, I know Chelsea earned their spot in the competition fair and square by winning the Champions League in this 4-year cycle that they made up. So no problem there for me. But it felt like Chelsea is a team that should not be among what was built the 32 best teams. But in the end, they got the ball rolling. They got into this final fair and square. And so they probably deserve to win this title. Now, what does this mean for the legacy? I mean, yes, they will go down as the first ever winners. I think that's okay. We can say that this was a big upset or whatever. But yeah, it will depend on how much this trophy will be valued going forward. I mean, there's a whole lot of money to be played. But when I look back at this tournament, at first I tried to ignore it. I watched the whole group stage only on highlights. In the morning, wake up, watch a few highlights. And even in the beginning, I was not into it. But the moment where it kind of grabbed me and where I realized this could actually be something bigger is when Benfica took on Boca and the Boca fans going crazy. I mean, this was such a click. Wow! This is actually a competition that there are clubs that really value that. And yes, Eurocentric again. I mean, I know that South American teams really want to show it the European teams that they're up to snuff. And while Boca did have a good showing against Benfica, probably should have won that game, the Argentinian teams were not up to snuff. But it was the Brazilian fans that really ignited and made this tournament special. Also, props to the organizers for keeping the Boca fans in Miami and the River fans on the other side of the coast, that they cannot interact at all, because we saw what was happening. But besides the Brazilian and Argentinian teams, and here and there some smaller fan bases, I think the Al Ahly and also Al Wydad got quite some good crowds in there. But besides that, it had very much the atmosphere of a pre-season tournament. And this was the weird thing. Is this now belonging to the 24-25 season or the 25-26 season? You see jersey from new season. You see some players being brought in. So this added to this weird vibe. Also, that especially in the group stage, most stadiums were desperately oversized. Also, kickoff times desperately misplaced. You cannot. I mean, I have lived in North Carolina and South Carolina for 10 years. You cannot play in the summer at 3 o'clock local time a game in these locales. I mean, yes, you can do in Atlanta because they have a roof up top, and that might be the solution to things. But you cannot play in Charlotte where there's no roof. And that is another thing. Yes, FIFA selected the best venues out there, all NFL-style venues, but they're so ill-fit for soccer/football. They don't have a roof, which in the summer, not a good thing, especially in the southeast. I'm talking Miami, I'm talking Charlotte, even Philadelphia and New York are getting really, really hot. Orlando, all these states in the southeast. And maybe it's even a trouble in Los Angeles, but there it's a dry heat. So I think it's probably not as bad, but of course, the heat is a factor. So that's the first thing. The stadiums were not chosen right and not really thought about. Kickoff time stadiums, how does this fit? We have the Charlotte games at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's not great watching, honestly. If you want to get the European audiences, I think most European audiences have clicked away after a while because the games were not great. The great games, and I remember this also at the 94 World Cup, where everyone said, the evening games, those are the games to watch, especially in the group stage. And of course, because it was cooler. And you had a little bit more time to breathe, and that games could develop, and those were the more exciting games, the ones that were played late. So this is something. Then also the pitch conditions. I mean, even the final venue in MetLife, MetLife Stadium, the pitch looked way too tiny, which of course might have played into the hand of Chelsea in the final, for instance. The field is not wide enough. The goals, how ridiculous look the goals. I already saw it last year at the Copa America. The goals in the US with the 2 bars on the back, I mean, they really just look propped up. And then when you look at the field itself, it looks like patchwork. That's not fit for a world championship. I personally would have liked if they, at least in the group stage, use all MLS stadiums. Yes, MLS were playing at the same time, but can't we just stop this league for a little bit and maybe have the competition if you're already there? I think this would have fit a whole lot better. Another criticism that I have of the tournament, I don't want to really blame the weather. I blame the lack of knowledge about the weather. Kickoff times, I understand you want to pan a little bit to the European audience, but be aware where you're playing this. I think it should be only in domed stadiums that you play the early kickoffs, because the product is not great if you play in this heat. Now, if I look at the stadiums that are used for the World Cup, especially in the United States, I mean, Mexico, I don't know, it will also be quite hot. But it is only Miami and I think Kansas City that has me a bit worried, because those are stadiums that are not with a roof. I mean, Miami has a roof, but it's not covered. But for instance, playing in Atlanta is not a problem. I mean, you could play even at noon local time in Atlanta, because it's an air-conditioned dome and it's a wonderful stadium. Same thing goes for Dallas, for instance. But MetLife up there, Philadelphia, those are a little bit more iffy. That much is for certain. FIFA will have to think about it, but I think the only thing they're thinking about is money, 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 money. Those are my criticisms, the main criticisms. On the other side, I have to say, I think that the idea of the tournament itself is not a bad one. And if this would have come up 20, 30 years ago, finally make a huge Club World Cup, I think it would have made sense. I would have loved it. This would have been made pre-Bosman even, because then you would have Brazilian teams that are not all ripped with their stars. But what will remain is that we had two finalists who lost in the group stage to Brazilian teams, and we have a winner from a country that didn't really care about this competition. Legacy? I don't know. I wanna give FIFA, as hard as it, the benefit of the doubt. I think they needed to do this tournament somehow. It was oversized, it was ill-placed, and honestly, while the United States have people from all over the world, that is not really the truth for when you play club teams. Because while there might be Brazilians living in the United States, how many Brazilians are there that are supporting a particular club that's a much smaller subset already? And the same goes for any other team out there. I also think that, the name recognition, and they couldn't do. I mean, the European teams, most of them I could defend, especially the English teams. Although it probably would have helped the competition if there was Liverpool or Manchester United in there, although United definitely will not have deserved it. Let's say Arsenal, some of the bigger names. City is not a big name. Chelsea, meanwhile, at least is a big name, and they won it. I was also thinking from an Italian perspective, it was a horrible tournament for the Italians. But, Inter were already tired in the Champions League final and had a lot of upheaval, that they then lost so unceremoniously against Fluminense. Yeah, okay. Was about to happen, but Juventus is not a team that should have been there. I really don't know how they have their coefficient high enough to qualify for this Club World Cup. I think it should be down to the federations in a way, one by coefficient that the federation should send someone. If you send a Napoli in there, heck, even Atalanta, who actually won a trophy, instead of Juventus, I think this could have looked better. Juventus were dreadful to watch. And same thing goes, it was great from an Austrian perspective to see an Austrian team there. But does Salzburg really belong in such a competition? I doubt it, honestly. And yeah, they get more money. It's not much better for the Austrian game. That much is for certain. So let's close the book on this Club World Cup. I think my overall feeling is, I'm happy that Real Madrid didn't win it, because they would make another big story out of it, and that they were so embarrassed. I'm sad that PSG did not win it. I think this tournament needed, for me to be really accepted, two things, and one of them did happen, that at least one non-European team makes a semi-final. So this was really great that Fluminense was in there, and that really the best team in the world wins. And it might develop that Chelsea are a really good team next season. We have to see. We have to see about that. But going into the tournament, Chelsea was not considered the best team in the world. They got hot during the tournament, and maybe, I'm saying this with a big maybe they got the rub of the green by not winning the group. And yeah, I actually think if Flamengo would have finished second in that group, they would have avoided Bayern Munich, and I think Flamengo could have made a deep run here. Flamengo could have been in the final, and that's the other thing with that format, that just winning the group was not an advantage for Flamengo. Same thing goes for Bayern. I mean, Bayern just stupidly went into the second place. But yeah, so be it. In any case, those are my thoughts on the FIFA Club World Cup. Let's close that chapter. And let's see where I will do my next podcast about, I think the Women's Euros is probably something that I should now a little bit focus on. We'll have to see, and of course preseason is also starting slowly. It will be still sparse coming up, but that's it from Football Talk today. If you're enjoying the show, you can follow me always on YouTube or on your podcatcher of your choice. Take the RSS link from the description below, and I think as you should all be able to find me on Apple Podcast, and Spotify will take it from there. But wherever you're listening, until next time, stay safe and always watch the beautiful game. Bye.